So, we are moving into a discussion of the great critic Clement Greenberg and the novelist, journalist Tom Wolfe. So, we're moving into a much more contemporary time period here with the specific sorts of art that they're talking about. Many of you are probably familiar with the abstract expressionists, the pop artists, these kind of iconic images that you would see. I think they're pretty familiar to a lot of us. It's a shame that we can't be talking about this in person. I would have really liked to have heard your thoughts on the little book, The Painted Word. I find it really funny and amusing, but also very philosophically important, obviously. And then Greenberg is kind of coming back to this issue that we've been discussing all semester. What is art's relationship to life? Now, I wanted to speak with you all in a video to give you a little bit of background about something that we actually skipped over. Originally in my syllabus, we were going to discuss the work of a man named Clive Bell. Bell is known as a formalist. Formalism is a really important philosophical theory that Greenberg picks up. I had to cut him out because of the way things worked with, all the rearranging, but I did want to say a little bit about the idea of formalism in art theory or art criticism. Greenberg is known as kind of a premier formalist. Formalism comes from the Platonic theory of the forms, and then back to Kant and his idea of forms of finality. This notion that what matters in the artwork is the form of the objects itself, and that it's not about our interpretation or a narrative or a story, but it's what you see immediately in that artistic encounter. So Greenberg was actually really known for his ability to make snap judgments about artworks. He would go visit a painter at his or her studio, have the artwork covered with a curtain, turn off the lights, and then say, "Hit me." And they would turn on the lights, pull the curtain off, and he would immediately say whether the artwork was good or bad. Now, you can take that or leave that as a quality way of judging a work of art's value, but part of that for him was a way to really just accept and have this incredible first impression just based on the visual impact, not on what he thought about the artist, not on what he knew about the artist. Now, what's interesting about that is that he was a formalist, and yet by virtue of being an art critic, he was adding this extra layer of interpretation to all of the artworks, which we get a lot of that from the Tom Wolfe essay. We see how at a certain point historically, when these abstract expressionists started to really become well-known, and they were kind of celebrities, famous, they were going to all the cool places, these art critics started to be a member of that world too, and that you couldn't understand or appreciate the art without the art critic. Now, what the art critic then told you was that the art didn't need an assisting theory, and yet it needed the assisting theory to understand the formalism or the fact that the art was making its own definition. Now, what does that all mean? So Tom Wolfe gets into this idea of flatness and mentions the way that the eye travels into the painting or doesn't travel into the painting, and that at a certain point when art was beginning to define itself. Now, you should also kind of have a little light bulb go off in your mind when you hear that or when you read that, to think about Hegel and his way of understanding that Geist is kind of constantly coming to know itself. Here we have another echoing idea that art is trying to know itself, it's trying to define itself, it's trying to use something in its own physical media to manifest something about itself. Okay, this is also similar to Danto, that issue with the Brillo boxes, and how art is nothing but aboutness. It's about the art itself. But what Greenberg said in conjunction with these abstract expressionists is that art is about flatness. When it makes itself as flat as possible, that is like blinking neon lights that say, this is art. Look, art is nothing but flat. So if I can make this as flat as possible, then I am making the announcement that I am art, which is a definition, right? So here we have that aesthetic definition coming to us in the form of the media itself. Now, how did they achieve flatness? So I have a short video here of Pollock pouring paint, splattering paint as he did. Many of you are probably familiar with his techniques. There was also a woman, Helen Frankenthaler, who decided to use canvases that were actually stripped. They weren't even treated in any way, but she would pour paint onto these stripped canvases so that the paint would drip and seep into the canvas itself. So the canvas itself was dyed. Now think about how different that was from someone like Degas or Van Gogh, where the value there was to see the layers of paint, to see the brush strokes, to see the building up, like almost the three-dimensional quality of the paint itself. But for Frankenthaler, Rothko, I have an image of a Rothko below, the idea was to make the paint seep into the canvas so that the canvas could reveal itself as flat as possible. Because the flatter that the art could be, the more of a definition of art it could be. So, check out those examples that I posted for you. Look, there are images also in the painted word, as you've seen, and I think that helps to illustrate how these theories progress and progress and progress until we get to the point of conceptual art, where art has become nothing but not only its definition in the visual, which was the flatness, but its actual definition in word, in type. So you have conceptual artists like Sol LeWitt, their artwork was itself instructions. Like, how do you create an artwork? Here's how you create an artwork, step by step. 1 this, 2 this. So there could be nothing more conceptual than that. So for Tom Wolfe, this is what proves the point and kind of provides this moment of the absolute most literary pinnacle that art could achieve. If art has become its own literary definition, its own textual definition, then there's nowhere else for it to go. And I want you to remember too, think about how I said that Hegel said that art, religion, and philosophy were these 3 equal but separate endeavors, human endeavors, and that they shouldn't borrow the task of each of the other. But when they do, art is dead. So then we have to ask ourselves, like at a point of Sol LeWitt, like at a point of high conceptual art, where the art is all it is an instruction of how to create the art, which is also a definition. Has art then become philosophy? And when it has become philosophy, is it no longer art? So, this is where I would have loved to have heard some of your thoughts, if these ideas are interesting, or if you did enjoy this book and the Greenberg essay. These are great paper topics. It's time to really start thinking about your paper topics. So please reach out to me if there are particular aspects of this that you would like to chat about. I would love to talk with you all. Okay. Hope things are going well. Bye-bye.